It's been well documented in recent times that the wagering landscape is under enormous pressure for the racing industry, and it's good to see that certain segments of the industry are now looking at ways to innovate and evolve what has been a somewhat stale landscape in recent times. Kevin Dixon, the chairman of Racing Queensland, joins me. Good morning to you, Kevin.
Good morning, Shane. How are you?
Not too bad. There was a press release that came out late yesterday from Racing Queensland, putting forward a suggestion that you are keen to look at opportunities to examine where we are with the current wagering landscape, but also what is available from an innovation perspective. Could you just take us through your thought process going down this path?
Yeah, sure, Shane. What we're thinking is that these deals, and when you put in place some sort of wagering structure, they tend to be for extended periods of time. And we've got the situation coming up here shortly where our current arrangements expire. So we felt it was time to really examine the marketplace to see what various players in the marketplace could offer in regard to alternatives. I mean, they talk often about the alternatives that they could provide if they were allowed to, and it's been a closed market and so forth. Well, we'll test all of that and see what everybody's got to say. So
you've put out an expression of interest to not only other wagering companies here in Australia, but also internationally?
Yeah, that's correct. We want the best possible deal for the racing industry in Queensland, and we believe that the wagering landscape has changed. The way it's structured around Australia probably isn't optimal. Whether or not it can be better, we don't really know, and I don't think anybody does within the confines and the constructs that we have in place. So given that we have this flexibility available to us at the moment, now's a good time to actually test a lot of that. Maybe we find that the historical way that we've been doing it is the best way. You'd think with the changes that have happened in recent times that won't be the case. So unless someone goes out there looking and asks everybody to put their best foot forward, you're never going to know.
Kevin, with this constant talk and desire by many in racing to have a national approach, would you be looking at discussions with your principal states, whether it be Racing New South Wales, Racing Victoria, to get their buy-in as to what could be the right model?
Oh, certainly that's the case. And, up to this point, we've made a point of keeping particularly New South Wales and Victoria, and to a lesser extent some of the other states, up to date with our thinking and where we're going, so that they know what we're about. They're enthusiastic to see the results of whatever we come up with as well, because, clearly if there is a better model out there, they'd be interested in it as well.
With the current deal with TATS, when does that actually conclude?
It concludes at the end of June in this year, so we've got 6 months to sort this landscape out.
How important is the retail element to the wagering landscape in Queensland versus the digital environment, the digital landscape?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, that, Shane, because depending on which operators you talk to, they'll try and put a different spin on it. But when it comes down to it, whilst electronic medium are very important, the retail environment is still the majority way in which wagering is done, certainly in Queensland, and it's the same around Australia. That's because wagering to some extent is a social activity. So you do it in pubs, clubs, at the races, or wherever you might do it. And, to a lesser extent, it's a business activity, and that tends to be, more centred around electronic means. So it is still a very, very important component. Now, if you talk to the operators who are predominantly electronic, they cry that they don't have the ability to get to a retail presence. If you talk to the predominantly retail ones, they cry about the electronic ones taking their market. So let's see when they've both got the opportunity to put forward a proposal on the other side of the fence what they've got to say.
How close will you be working with the Queensland State Government?
Oh, very closely, because at the end of the day, the wagering licence that is provided, and it's the same in all states, is actually a government licence. So they have to be carefully updated, and at the end of the day have to be convinced that it's the right thing for the industry as well.
Do you feel that a long-term licence is the right thing for racing? I mean, we've just come off Racing Victoria and Tabcorp doing a deal which stands for 12 years. From Queensland's perspective, are you looking at having a similar length, or are you perhaps carving up the licence to smaller amounts?
Well, it'll depend a lot on the responses that we get. But when you're looking at something as complicated as this, for everybody to get the benefit out of it, it typically takes a fair time to do that, and therefore a reasonable period of contract is necessary. We've just come off one that was 15 years long. I think that's too long. What the right number is, we'll wait and see what the feedback is, but, you would suspect that it has to be, in and around the sort of 8 to 12 year sort of mark.
Kevin, do you feel that with these lengthy deals that are put in place with wagering providers, there needs to be a clause that actually shows that the wagering group will be proactive and will try and evolve and stay ahead of the market?
I think that's certainly the case. So one of the biggest difficulties we've got with the deal that is now expiring is that there is no way that the people who wrote this 15 years ago could have conceived of the changes in the landscape over that time. So therefore, some of the things that are put in place and various percentages and the way in which payments are calculated and the types of products that are allowed are no longer relevant, and you're always trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. So one of the major components of any new deal will have to be flexibility. I don't know about you, Shane, but I don't back myself to be smart enough to know what these guys are going to have thought up in 10 years' time. Maybe we'll only have to think what else we want to back and it'll happen. So I think it necessarily has to be flexible. It has to have the ability to move with the times, to move with technology, to move with what customers want from time to time, and make sure that everybody gets fair return out of that happening, irrespective of what we think the landscape is now.
You used a term there which I'm glad you mentioned, and that is customer, because there has been significant criticism towards a lot of the wagering providers that they don't seem to treat the customer appropriately. How important will that be around your dealings going forward with this new wagering deal that is scheduled for mid this year?
Well, it's very important. I like to think that like this, and this is a sort of a word of caution to the wagering operators out there, if you like, from our perspective. But the major groups involved in the sport are the owners, and I include with those the trainers who work for them, the clubs who put on the show, and the customers who provide the wagering, and then of course there's the wagering operators. Now, if you look at those, the owners have been underwater for a long time. The clubs have been struggling. The customers get a raw deal, and the wagering operators are making a lot of money. So there seems to be something wrong in that balance, and we've got the opportunity now of trying to address that.
Are you going to talk to the wagering providers about, and also the government, I think this is a key component with the government, to talk about takeout rates, because that is one area, particularly from a parimutuel perspective over the journey, that never really seems to be addressed?
Yeah, I think what we need to do is really look at takeout rates more on a product basis than on a operator basis. The current inequity is caused because different operators, depending historically how they came to be, pay different rates and therefore have different allowable takeout rates and so forth. If we move this to a platform where takeout rates are consistent across the type of product being offered, whether it be parimutuel, fixed odds, exotics, or whatever it might be, then the playing field becomes a lot flatter, and everybody competes on the same basis. At the end of the day, the customer is looking for the best odds, and if one person or one operator has a advantage in terms of the amount that they have to pay the regulator or the government, then they'll always be able to offer a better odds to be able to attract the customer. Now that just seems to be, it doesn't matter how you think that through, there just seems to be something wrong with that. And, that's something that we've got to try and seek to address.
Racing Queensland is the regulator for all three codes of racing in Queensland. Is that an important factor in these negotiations, that you will be doing dealings with wagering providers that understands the strengths and weaknesses of the three codes of racing?
Oh, that has to be paramount in our mind. One of the strengths of that model here is that you would have to suspect, because Queensland is, basically the third state in racing, and that's probably the case in each of the codes. If we weren't combined together, the minor codes in particular would struggle to get the attention necessary to put any sort of decent sort of deal in place. So the advantage of going together and the strength of that is key. But I think that we have an experience here at the moment where there is a far greater turnover, for instance, on greyhounds through the corporates than there is through the TAB, and that's about availability. It's about the type of betting that takes place in greyhounds, and it's about the offering of best toe dogs. Now, it's all right for us to say that's wrong and it shouldn't be and all that, but that's the way people want to do it. We have to put in place a set of structures that allow people to get the sort of product they want, but still allow us to get the return for it.
Harness racing has been well documented, is under enormous pressure Australia-wide. Is there a way that you could create, say, more attractive wagering opportunities for a sport like harness racing to try and give it a boost?
Yeah, I think harness racing has to play more to its strengths and stop, I think, the mood that's been over the last 10 years or so, which is to try and compete with the other two racing codes. The other two racing codes have a natural advantage, certainly in terms of the retail punter, in the length of time that it takes in order for an event to be run. Harness racing, though, from a spectacle point of view, is second to none. So I believe their real challenge is to work with the wagering operators and certainly the broadcasters in order to allow punting on a harness race to take more of a spectacle-driven view rather than something that's more volume-driven, which certainly you get in the pubs and clubs, and you see that very, very much with greyhound racing of an evening.
Queensland Racing has a long-standing relationship with Sky Racing as the principal broadcast partner. Is that something that will need to be factored into whatever deal is being done for your new wagering provider?
It's certainly something we've thought about. I don't think it's an overwhelming consideration, though, because we currently have a wagering partner in Queensland that is, in competition with the owner of Sky Channel. So, it's something that we already have a couple of different stables involved and managed to work that quite well. So, yes, it's a consideration, but I don't think it's an overwhelming one.
If I can ask you about the werunasone.com.au, which is basically the principal website now for the racing industry in Queensland, have you had positive responses to the development of this?
Oh, absolutely. And we see the way in which behaviour is occurring now in Queensland very much responding to that campaign. Like all Queenslanders, it doesn't matter what sport or endeavour it is. Queenslanders are perfectly able to get together when they think that they're taking on the greater foe, which is those outside of Queensland. And, we're using that genetic inherent capability of Queenslanders to make a stronger industry across the three codes and to run as one. We saw that recently when we had combined gallop and harness meetings. We'll be doing more of those, and we've had combined gallop and greyhound meetings. So we'll be continuing to look at those innovations to see if we can both grow the codes, but also grow the interest and ultimately grow the wagering.
What would you consider, Kevin, right here, right now, to be the greatest strength of Queensland Racing?
I think the greatest strength of Queensland Racing by far is the passion and the day-to-day hands-on involvement of the stakeholders and the participants. If you look at some of the other states, there is a much greater corporate view, if you like, to the way in which racing is run. In Queensland, it's run by the people involved, and they get involved and they get their hands dirty. That has its challenges, but it has an enormous strength, as it does in any business.
Really appreciate your time this morning, Kevin. It's going to be an interesting period of time as the development of the new wagering landscape for Queensland unfolds. I look forward to staying in touch.
Okay, thanks very much, Shane.
Kevin Dixon there, the chairman of Racing Queensland. If you'd like to find further information about what Racing Queensland is achieving or aiming to achieve through the new wagering landscape, and they are seeking innovation from a variety of wagering providers, not just here in Australia but also internationally, you can find that at their website racingqueensland.com.au, or you can request some further information by sending an email to info@racingqueensland.com.au. Plenty more to come here on Racing Ahead. Greg Carpenter will join me very shortly, 9:22.